A very good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are joining us in the world. And welcome to the second installment of our NGPA Up in the Air webinar series. My name is Brian Gambino, president of the NGPA. Thank you so much for joining us here again. We truly appreciate your viewership. We truly appreciate your support of NGPA as we launch this Up in the Air webinar series. Again, the second installment of this new series for us here at NGPA. This year is meant as a replacement, if you will, for our Industry Expo event, which unfortunately has been postponed. Normally, we'd get to see an upwards of 1,500 attendees come through our event out in Palm Springs, California next month in February. But obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can still not gather in those large groups. We cannot see our over 62 exhibiting companies representing 300 exhibitors from those companies. And again, the 1,500 plus attendees, including so many of our own NGPA members joining us at that fantastic industry event. So here we are hosting the Up in the Air webinar series. Again, our answer to bring pieces of information about the current state of the aviation industry right to your screens, right into your home. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And we appreciate all the companies that are supporting us through this endeavor in the Up in the Air webinar series. For those of you who are unfamiliar with NGPA, we are the worldwide LGBT aviation community. 30 years of history for our organization. We came together back in the 1990s to create a safe place for aviators who identified as LGBTQ. Back then, there was a lot of discrimination offered to those who identified as LGBTQ, especially in the aviation industry. Whether you lost your job for coming out of the closet, or whether you risked dishonorable discharge from the military, or whether you faced family issues or being shunned away by your own family, there was a need for a space for aviation individuals who were LGBTQ to find common-minded folks who supported them, who became a family that they chose, who became their support system so that they continue to fight the good fight in their aviation hopes and dreams. Fast forward 30 years, we are the largest worldwide LGBT aviation community now, representing the largest 501c3 nonprofit organization for the LGBT aviation community. We've grown to giving away tons and tons of scholarships as well to many deserving members of the NGPA and the aviation community at large. In fact, we just awarded this past November, even amidst the pandemic, $150,000 in scholarship awards to very deserving applicants so that they can further their flight careers and flight dreams. You can check out more about the NGPA at www.ngpa.org. There's also a Join Now tab. It's up in the top right portion of your screen once you're on that webpage, and you can become part of our growing aviation community here. You don't have to identify as LGBTQ. We also love to welcome our Plus members, which is our allies. We love our allies here. They are some of the strongest advocates for the LGBT community in their spaces and in their lives. And we truly appreciate the support of all of our allies. Speaking of support, here on the Up in the Air webinar series, we're so happy to have Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air joining us today. Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air have 89 years of history that dates back to 1932 when they started as McGee Airways. They are a staple in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest for aviation and air travel, a legacy airline here in the United States. Alaska has consistently made a name for itself by ranking at the top of the J.D. Power list as an airline with one of the highest customer service satisfaction ratings amongst traditional airlines. And they've earned that title now for the past 12 years. And that's surely a testament to the over 16,000 employees that Alaska Airlines has across their network. Alaska Airlines has been a proud supporter of us here at the NGPA for many years now. They're at the diamond level of sponsorship here at the NGPA, and we're so thankful for the support of their leadership, of their team members, and of their employees. And we're so happy to have so many of our NGPA members find homes with jobs within the Alaska and Horizon community. I said they were a diamond level sponsor. They are a diamond level sponsor of the NGPA, representing over a $25,000 commitment on a yearly basis to our organization. They provided countless scholarships to our members. Most notably, one of the most sought after scholarships is the Boeing 737 type rating scholarship that they've offered to NGPA and our NGPA members over the past couple of years. And I was actually just looking at the attendee list for participants right now live in the webinar. This past year's winner, Olivia Cole Encinas, I believe she's part of the group right now. Congratulations to you again in securing that Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 scholarship. Alaska Airlines also sponsored our 2019 Aviation Inclusion Summit, which brought together leaders across all aviation spectrums to learn more about diversity, inclusion, and equity tactics that they can employ at their respective companies to make a more inclusive workspace for all of their employees. So a very big shout out and thank you to our friends at Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air. We're so happy you're here today. Joining us today from Alaska and Horizon, a great team to have a presentation for you to tell you more about the pandemic era changes that their companies have made to navigate the current pandemic, their plans for future growth, their plans for future hiring. A great team to present today. It's going to be Eric Bra, he's the Horizon Air System Chief Pilot, as well as Carlos Zendejas, he's the VP of Flight Operations at Horizon Air. Presenting from Alaska's Seattle-based Chief Pilot Office, it'll be Ron Limes, as well as supporting Allison Hart and Deja Hubbard, both Alaska Airlines Senior Talent Acquisition Partners. After the end of their presentation, we will go to our live question and answer. Everyone here in our webinar will have the opportunity to ask any questions you have to the Alaska Airlines team live in real time. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screens, you'll see a raise hand function. Once we get to the question and answer in about 30 minutes time, if you have a question you'd like to ask to the Alaska Airlines team, you can hit the raise hand function. We will call on you. We will unmute your microphone. Don't worry, your camera won't come on, just your voice, and you'll be able to ask your question to the Alaska Airlines team in real time. If we don't get to everyone's questions, we will be putting up a screen at the end of the webinar that has contact email addresses for both Alaska Airlines recruitment and Horizon Air recruitment, where you can get any other questions answered. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to the Horizon side of the house right now. I'd like to introduce Carlos Zendejas as well as Eric Bra for a presentation about Horizon Air. Carlos, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. The show is yours.
Right. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And to everybody online, wherever you are, morning, afternoon, good afternoon. Great to see you. I wish we were doing this in person. Obviously, COVID has had a little bit to do with that. So we don't get to do it this year, but let's meet together next year. So thank you so much for that opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you, to tell you a little bit about both Horizon and Alaska, and to answer whatever questions are on your mind. I'm sure you got a lot of questions about what's going on in the aviation world, what's going on with the pandemic. We'll be happy to address as many questions as we can for you. We do have a little bit of a presentation. We're going to try and split time evenly between Horizon and Alaska to give you a little bit more about what we have going on at each of the different companies. A little bit about myself. My name is Carlos Zendejas, Vice President of Flight Operations for Horizon. I actually started in the Air Force, spent 11 years flying active duty in the Air Force. So for anybody out there in the military, thank you for your service. Alaska hired me in 2002, and I was very fortunate to spend 15 years at Alaska Airlines on the MD-80 and then the 737, and 6 of those years in management. And for the last 3.5 years, I've had the pleasure of being a part of Horizon Air. 3 years as the System Chief Pilot, and now about 4 or 5 months as the VP of Flight Operations. And it's a terrific company. So I want to tell you a little bit more about it. Here with me is Eric Bra, who's our new Chief Pilot at Horizon. He's having a little bit of problems with the screen, so I'll take the presentation, but he's going to be available to answer any questions as well. And he's a 17-year pilot with Horizon. He's actually in his 18th year now. So let me see if I can share my screen. We have a few slides that will help me cover this with you. All right.
And just a quick note, Carlos, it's Brian here. For those, we know that we have 5 phone call-in listeners right now for the webinar. So don't worry. I know you can't see the screen that's being shared, but all of this is recorded for everyone here, as well as if you have friends. This will be available on our website, the same place where you went to register, within 24 hours time, as well as in our NGPA podcast. We'll tell you more about that later. So for the phone call-in listeners, don't worry. You'll be able to see all this
within 24 hours. Hey, Brian, you got muted, but yeah, thank you for that. So this will be available for those of you that don't get to see it, or if anybody that missed it and would like to see it, it'll be available for them. All right. Let me switch to the next slide. So lots of questions, I'm sure. Pandemic hits. So what did we do here at Horizon? So first of all, we did not furlough any of our pilots. As we know, all of a sudden, the pandemic hit us, and the drop in the flying public was pretty severe during that April time frame. And for us here at Horizon, we did not send any of the classes, whether they be new hires or upgrade classes, home. They got to continue and finish their training. And so we did see a bit of quite a bit of a drop off in our flying during that time period. But we were able to manage our staffing through voluntary leaves of absence, which was terrific. That meant that we did not furlough one single pilot here at Horizon. And we did have some takers, and we needed some takers for those voluntary leaves of absence. And we got plenty as our flying came down. But we sort of did this bit of a roller coaster where we went down on our flying, and then we came back up, and then down and up again. And so much so that that it's actually resulted in us starting hiring in November. And why are we hiring? So the plan is for Horizon, who is which I hit in another slide, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alaska Airlines. And we have the right airplanes for what's going on right now. We have the Q400 and the Embraer 175, both at 76 seats, which is perfect for the demand that's going on out in the business right now. And so what happened is the pandemic hits, and as you guys know, prior to that, attrition was a big way of life for the regionals. As the majors were hiring, where do they get the bulk of their pilots, which Ron can talk about, is they come from the regionals. So a lot of our pilots were moving on to the majors. And so we were turning over somewhere between 20 and 25% of our pilots every single year, which meant a lot of opportunities for pilots here at Horizon. So as the pandemic hits, attrition almost comes to a stop, and it certainly almost came to a stop on the captain side. But we did end up losing some more first officers. Some first officers that said, hey, you know what, I wasn't expecting the airline industry to be like this, and they left. And so what did that mean is we ended up developing a little bit of a gap between the number of captains and the number of first officers that we had. And what that resulted in is we needed to close the gap, because when we get to Q2 of this year, we're going to be back to pre-COVID levels of flying here at Horizon. So we brought on 3 classes on the 175, which resulted in 16 pilots. And so far this year, we brought on a couple of classes on the Q400, and the plan is to at least have 5 classes on the Q, which will be 30 pilots. And so that's what we know right now. We're taking it basically one class at a time as we identify what our needs are. But I got to tell you, from a flight operations perspective, to be in the middle of a pandemic and to be one of the very few airlines that was hiring pilots, that was pretty special for us and pretty significant. And I talked about this is, hey, we were the right size aircraft, whether it's the 175 or the Q. Those 76 seats were perfect for the demand that was happening at this time. And so the way Alaska Air Group utilized us, they took those markets where maybe it didn't make sense to run a 737, and we put the E or the Q on those routes. And as a matter of fact, as we move through this first quarter, we're doing all this hiring to be able to have the appropriate level of staffing on the first officer side as on the captain side. Because when we hit the beginning of the second quarter, our utilization rate is going to be full fleet. So that means all of our airplanes are going to be out there flying, and the utilization rates are going to be pretty high. In some cases, we'll hit some periods where it'll be historical highs for those airplanes. So what does that mean is that our flying and our block hours are going to look very similar to what they did pre-COVID. Why? Because as the vaccine is out there, as there's a return to travel, we're going to play a super important role for Air Group and getting folks to where they need to be with the right size aircraft. And so we're super excited about that and what that means and what that'll mean for us the rest of the year. I get that there's some factors out there that could still change this, is the effect of the vaccine, people's our guests and their confidence in wanting to come back to flying. But we're very optimistic that as we move through the year, we'll start to see some of that demand return, which means for us here at Horizon that we're going to stay busy and we're going to do our part to help Air Group during this recovery. When you talk about our airplanes, one of the things that we can't help to talk about is our technology. We're super proud of the technology, just the same as Alaska is very proud of the technology on their airplanes. On the Q400, they're Cat 3 airplanes. They have HUDs. They're able to do RMP down to 0.1. As a matter of fact, I flew the 737 and we did Cat 3 airplane or Cat 3 approaches. Here on the Q400, you actually do hand flown Cat 3 approaches, single engine. So that is just some amazing technology on the Q400s. And the Embraers aren't that far behind. They don't have the HUD, but they do have Cat 3. As a matter of fact, we were the first carrier with Cat 3 capabilities on the Embraer 175. And they also have RMP technology with RMP approaches down to 0.1. So we're super proud of what we can do with our airplanes, especially in the environment that we fly. For any of you that have spent any time in the Pacific Northwest, the rain and fog is a bit of a factor for us. All right, another thing that we're just super proud of is that this October we made our return back to the state of Alaska. Obviously, where Alaska is our livery. We previously had a presence up there in the Q, and it was about 3 years since we had been up in the state of Alaska. We were happy to launch service with the 175 back to the state of Alaska, and now it also gives us that connectivity between the lower 48 and the state of Alaska with our route that we fly between Seattle and Anchorage. And then when we're up there in the state, we go to Fairbanks, King Salmon, in Dellingham for now. And so we're able to do and service some of those communities that are very dependent on air service. And we're able to service them with the right aircraft, which means that it's not seasonal service, that some of these villages out there are going to get jet service, especially during those winter time periods when the demand is a little bit less. So we're really excited about where we are in the state of Alaska right now and what the possibilities are for us up there as well. Now for you, a lot of you have that are pilots might have a lot of time and qualified to go to a major, which is what Ron is going to talk to you about. For those of you that don't, and you need to build up a little bit more time, we would love to have you here at Horizon. And so we do have several programs that feed us. As you know, it was super competitive. It seems like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago, a year ago, where all the regionals were hiring at a really fast pace. So it became super, super important that you had this pipelines built in to be able to provide a portion of your hiring needs. And for us, we develop a number of different programs. And in all honesty, most of these programs are on hold right now due to the fact that, hey, the demand is not quite there. There's availability of pilots, but we hope that some of these programs come back in the not so distant future. But we did have agreements with 135 operators. We did have a pilot development program with the universities and flight schools. For those of you with helicopter background, we have a rotor transition program. And then we also want to give our own employees an opportunity for those of them that want to fly through this internal development program. So the goal of the program has always been to provide a certain percentages of our pilots through these pipelines to get them on here to Horizon. And for those that want to stay with us and make a career, lots of opportunities here to be an instructor, to be a check pilot, to get into management. And for those that are looking to move on to a major, one of the things we did at the end of 2017 and launched the program right at the beginning of 2018 was a pathway program to Alaska Airlines. So I'll talk about it here in just in a couple of more slides. So this is our Ascend program, super proud of it. It's been a terrific program to get into our pipelines. The pilot development program has also been terrific, and it's with the schools, with the flight schools where we go. And shortly after your private pilot, you're able to apply an interview and know that you have a job. It's basically the job offer here for Horizon, contingent on you continuing to get your ratings, staying on board with the schools as a CFI, because we need to keep the pipelines going and staying and instructing the next generation was super important for us. And then getting to your ATP minimums or your restricted ATP minimums, and our recruiting team does a great job of keeping track of where you are and when you're going to meet those requirements. And what that means is that they'll have a class waiting for you. All you have to do is come within, I think, about 40 hours of those requirements, because some of our time in the sim counts, and they're able to tell you what class you're going to start. So those pilot development programs were a terrific way to come on board. And then once we do have you on board, we want to keep you. We want to keep you part of the Alaska Airlines family for your entire flying career. And so what does that mean is that we created this pathway program that very early on in your time at Horizon, without even having the hours to qualify for a major, that you will actually apply, sit down, and have an interview. It is an interview, but it's a little bit different than the Alaska interview for candidates that apply through their website. It's more of a meet and greet style interview. And if you're successful, you actually get put onto the list. And then it's a list that goes in seniority order. And then eventually, as Alaska is hiring, the minimum percentage of their hires that will come through this pathway program is 30%. We have hit periods where we're able to provide 40 to 50% of their hiring needs, which is terrific. That means that you have the opportunity to come here, spend time with us, and then when you're ready, you get the opportunity to stay with an air group, go on to Alaska, and hopefully carry out the rest of your career with them. So that means that your professional career, your entire professional career, can be spent with Alaska Air Group, and it's here as part of the Horizon family, and then it's part of the Alaska family. And what you're going to find is that our DNA and our values are very similar. And so if you like what we're all about, then this is a great opportunity for you to spend time with us. All right. You know, I think I had 15 minutes and I think I hit it pretty close, because I want to make sure that I give Ron plenty of time to talk about Alaska. Ron and I had the pleasure. Seattle is a really big base for Alaska Airlines, and I think we had about 11 towing pilots. So Ron and I were both base chief pilots there about the same time. And so it is my pleasure now to turn it over to Ron Limes. Brian?
Wow, well, thank you, Carlos. Appreciate that. Love the presentation. You know, Carlos and I have done presentations over the years many, many times. And always a pleasure to hear him and learn from him. So nicely done, Carlos. And again, my name is Ron Limes. I'm the base chief pilot here in Seattle for Alaska Airlines. I'm a 21-year guy here. My background, similar to Carlos, I'm a military member. I spent 26 years in the Air Force for both active and reserve. And I ended my career commanding a C-17 squadron right down the road at Joint Base Lewis McChord. So happy to be here. I got hired here in 1999. And I've been in my current position about three and a half years or so. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so we can go. Here we go. I just want to say I'm honored to be in this forum, and I'm proud to work for a company that values diversity and inclusion and is a big supporter of the LGBTQ community. You know, both inside our airline and in the community where we are based. Also want to hit up our relationship with Horizon. Like Carlos said, you know, I couldn't have said it more, so couldn't have said it better, rather. Our DNA is very similar. We have a very close relationship, both leadership and our pathway program. And we're even though we're two separate companies, a lot of our values and the things we do are intertwined. So pleasure to be on board with them. Next slide. My phone is ringing. I apologize for that. So here's our next slide. You can see right there, we have a 737 MAX. I'm excited to announce that we took delivery of one just past weekend. It's our first MAX on a property. And of course, this is a new era, a new chapter for us at Alaska Airlines. We're going to be converting or transitioning to a single fleet, which I'll get into in just a little bit. That was announced last month. That we're going single fleet, and 737 MAX's first delivery is the start of that new chapter. So once the airplanes are on property, of course, we have to exercise the airplane. It gets 2 months of verification process after delivery, And the pilot training program is pretty robust, we think. Each pilot will do about 8 hours of training, both simulator and CBT training. And as similar as the 737 MAX is to the NG, they are different airplanes. And once you get inside, many of you probably already flown some if you work for Southwest or American where you have MAXes. It's a different animal. Still a 737, I get it. The switches are just about the same, but there's some differences that require some significant amount of training. So we're excited about that. We also have a lot of our pilots that are transitioning from our Airbus aircraft to our Boeing aircraft. And so it's a whole new world for them. And we do like our MAX training. We think it's just about the finest in the industry, and we're very proud of it, proud of the product we put out. And of course, the maintenance technicians need to do a lot of training too. It's a different airplane, so they do about 40 hours of differences training on the MAX. Here's a slide of our fleet update. And as you can see on the second line, our MAXes, we're excited that last month we announced an order for 68 MAX 9 aircraft. So a total of 68 with an option for 52 more. And in Alaska Airlines history, like Brian said, we have 80 plus year history. We've never turned down any options. So we anticipate not only those 68, but those additional 52 airplanes will be on property by, as you see here on the screen here, in 2026. And that makes it a nice, healthy fleet of 737 MAX 9 airplanes. And like I said, we're transitioning. You can see the Airbus A320s, they start to attrit and go away. And the 321neos, we have a fleet of 10 of them. And they're going to stick around. They are just tremendous airplanes, and they have the range and efficiencies that the Air Group wants. So they're going to keep those at least through 2026, and then I'm sure decisions will be made on those aircraft as they age. The thing about the 737 MAX, it opens up new routes, longer range, gives us more options to where we can take our passengers to routes they want to go. End of March is the first time we've joined the One World Alliance. It's our first ever time that we're going to join any alliance as far as the Air Group is concerned. And as you can see on that route map, there are a lot of great airlines in the One World Alliance. And this gives us more flexibility, right, for your passengers to get anywhere they want to go. So April 1st, someone will log on to alaskaair.com and they can click and go anywhere to, say, Australia. And it should be a seamless process for the passenger. And it should be seamless once they show up at the airport and jump on different airlines. But it should be one ticket, and that gives us a lot of flexibility. We're excited about this, not only for our passengers, but also internally, for our employees when they non-rev and when they travel. One of the benefits of working for an airline is moving around the world. And this gives us a lot more places we can go easily. So excited about that, the One World Alliance. And again, mentioned our support for the LGBT community. Globe is our BRG. They advocate for LGBTQ issues, and they're great representation, great representatives for that community in our airline. They have the ear of our leaders. And as you can see, that airplane, we parked that in Palm Springs. Wish we could go this year, like Carlos said and Brian said. Unfortunately, the pandemic has halted all of that. But I think 2022 is going to be a big year. Lots of parties in 2022 all over the world. But that plane with the pride colors is a great representation of our support for that community. So proud of that, very proud. Here's the performance. Beginning in March of this year, March of 20, everyone's business model changed. Whether you wanted to or not, you had to change. And so it was a very challenging year, but there was some positives. And here, delivering on our priorities, the health and safety of our employees and our guests, of course, goes without saying. But we also had to maintain a strong balance sheet. Our leadership has done just an amazing job of that, of balancing that very precarious position that we're in. And we are competing and adding back capacity. Earlier this month, we opened up our middle seats. Of course, we're making the announcements and the mask compliance policies just about all across the whole industry, but our middle seats are opened up, and now we're adding capacity. As a matter of fact, I was on a flight, it was nearly full back from Phoenix just the other day, and the plane was packed. So it's exciting to see the capacity bounce back and the demand bounce back. And of course, the return of demand will depend on our ability to get people in seats, offer low fares, keep our guests safe, make them feel safe, and all of us can help. And of course, safety. I don't know if anyone's seen our safety dance ad we ran. It's pretty fun, a lot of fun, and it gives us a lot of notoriety about safety being our #1 value. And we not only say it, we live it. Yes. COVID business recovery plan. What we like about this is our bonuses. You know, Alaska Airlines, every company has bonuses, but our bonuses are not based purely on profit, but also based on performance. So that means each and every employee has some skin in the game, that we can contribute to the success of our airline. And you can also contribute to the success of getting bonuses. So we really like this. We launched in August a COVID business recovery plan, and it focused on the health and safety of employees and guests. And of course, the bottom line, we had to try to achieve a cash burn of 0. We weren't making any revenue. So how do you control costs? And you do that by savings and cutting costs. In 2020, we performed well, and in several cases, our performance bonus plan is going to pay out here next month in February, and all employees are going to get just a little bit of extra pay, which is really exciting. It's a boost in the arm for all the hard work and that the employees in different divisions have been doing. And it's going to pay out about 4.98% of annual eligible earnings. So that's a nice boost in this time of year to get some extra pay in your extra deposit in your pay account. So it's really nice, really positive. You know, and this was a little innovation. I don't know if you can see that slide, but Alaska Airlines was trying to innovate, and we're always trying to innovate. And one of the things they came up with was, well, maybe we can, if there are no passengers on the plane, maybe we can put cargo in the cabin. And it developed a way to, and you can see there are Amazon boxes, and there are different kind of parcels on the seats. And we started carrying cargo in the passenger cabin, which was really cool. And not only in the cabin, but also in the belly. And we were the only carrier that was doing that, putting cargo on the seats. Just trying to innovate and work with the best that you can, you know, work with what you have. Because the COVID pandemic really threw a wrench in our operation. Of course, Carlos mentioned Alaska, and Alaska is, like I said, like he said, on our livery, and that community is very important to us. They depend on us. You know, 80% of the communities up there, you can't drive in. They depend on air travel and for us to deliver cargo by air. So we're very excited that we got to support those communities, and we remain committed, you know, during the pandemic, to not only deliver other supplies, but medical supplies and life-saving equipment, which is very, very important. So very excited about that. We'll get to support those communities. You know, about 10 years ago, so we started traveling to Hawaii, and it's become now a very major part of our business. And one of the ways, you know, of course, the COVID pandemic has constrained the travel to Hawaii. So in order to make the travel a little bit easier, we came up with a way to pre-clear our guests going to Hawaii. You know, prior to this program, if you landed in Hawaii, you had to wait in line and kind of prove that you had a negative test within the last 48 hours of travel or 72 hours of travel. But now, if you produce those credentials here in Seattle or Portland or LA or wherever we fly to the islands, you provide that proof. We'll give you one of these wristbands. And then once you land in Hawaii, you're pre-cleared, and you basically slip past the lines and go get on with your vacation as best you can. So that was a nice little innovation there too. So I think I'm a little short of 15 minutes, which is fine. I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. But right there is our email address. If anyone has any questions, be happy to answer. So now I'll turn back over to Brian. Thank you.
Ron, thank you so much. And Carlos and Eric, thank you so much for taking us through those presentations. Number one, Ron, the safety video absolutely love the safety video. My husband can attest to the fact that I love watching different airline videos. Although I don't work as an Alaska Airlines employee, I work for a competing carrier on the East Coast. I do love watching other airline safety videos, and your safety dance, great innovation and great pivoting in a time where we really needed a smile. So well done in that regard. So we have a question and answer time. Before we jump into that, I'll just review. If you do have a question to ask our Alaska team live, you can go ahead and use the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen now. If you hit your raise hand function, that'll queue in order for us, and then we will unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask your question live to the Alaska team in real time. Again, your cameras won't turn on. It will just be your audio. The only thing you'll need to do is once we do allow you to speak, you might have to hit the unmute portion as well. That'll become active for you. But before we do that, just to give our Alaska and Horizon team a little break for a moment, we always love to showcase some other sponsors here at the NGPA. New plan in our Up in the Air webinar series. So we're going to show you just a quick short video featuring another incredible sponsor of the NGPA. They've been a gold level sponsor of the NGPA for many years now, offering us lots of different products that we've used in different auctions as well as giveaways at some of our events that NGPA has had in both Palm Springs and in Provincetown, Massachusetts at our Cape Cod Classic. So this company, they go by the name of Bose. They have some incredible aviation headsets, and this feature is about specifically their Bose A20 headset. Bose lives by their mantra, if you will, of better sound through research. And so if you can take a quick look here at this video from our friends at Bose, we'll be right back live with your question and answer. Thanks for putting your hands up. We'll be right back.
From an early age, I've loved beautiful machines. I can appreciate the engineering that's gone into that product, and when I think of a Bose headset, I have that same feeling.
I was presented with the Bose A20. It just makes it so that you no longer have to think about trying to hear. You just hear it.
So big thank you to our sponsors at Bose for continuing their support of the LGBTQ community, and especially us here at the NGPA. You can check out that product and more at bose.com. And if you are an NGPA member, you can sign into your member account. You can go to member services, and under discounts, we do offer discounts on Bose products for NGPA members. Just another benefit of membership. All right, Alaska and Horizon team, we've got lots of hands raised here. So we're going to start with those questions. And I also have some questions from the chat box. So if you're ready, Alaska and Horizon team, if you can come back on video and open your mics and join us. First that we're going to bring on live to the webinar, Patrick Rogers. Patrick Rogers, thanks so much for raising your hand. Just make sure you unmute your mic. You're free to go ahead and ask the Alaska and Horizon team your question. Welcome.
This is for Alaska. At my current airline, I should have the seniority to upgrade to the 7.3 NG here this spring. Would having captain time on that plane, for lack of a better term, overqualify me for Alaska, or would having time on the 7.3 make me more qualified for you guys?
Well, it definitely makes you more attractive, for sure. I mean, if you could fly the 7.3 and knowing that we're going to a 7.3 fleet exclusively, definitely makes you more attractive. If you have your PSE in any complex aircraft, great. I mean, that's fine.
Okay.
If you have 7.3 time, makes you a little more attractive. You know, a couple letters of recommendation makes you more attractive. All those things kind of count.
Okay. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate the question.
Thanks for your question, Patrick. Next up, welcome to the webinar, William Robson. William Robson, you just need to unmute your microphone. You are now free to ask your question to the Alaska Airlines team. Welcome, William.
Hey, thanks very much. So I'm an NGPA member from the UK. Thanks very much for all your support for the NGPA and all the information and giving up your time this afternoon. I'm also very excited for Alaska entering the One World for the non-rev stuff, so that's good. So I'm over in the UK. I fly the Airbus around Europe. I understand that sort of prioritizing those that come through your training programs and nationals first, but would there ever be something that either Horizon or Alaska would be open to international candidates?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. We do have international candidates, and we have international pilots here in Alaska. Yeah, your address is is not a limitation for us. You know what I mean? If you're current qualified and you're qualified for the job and you are the right fit for our culture, you fit us, we fit you. We don't care where you're from.
Great.
Now, I don't know about all the, the visas and that process, William. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. But if you can get but we do have international members flying here for Alaska Airlines. I'm sure Carlos can say the same thing on Horizon. But your address is not a limitation for us.
Cool. And I think, William, you probably know better than us being overseas. And I thought that was you, William. Good to see you. Thanks for joining our international call the other night.
Yeah, you too.
You probably know better about the transition process. So I would assume, I know at JetBlue, at the carrier that I work for, that you have to have an FAA license to be qualified for the job. The transition process, is that very difficult? Unfortunately, I'm not familiar. Are you?
So the research that I've done, it seems fairly simple as a sort of a course that you go on and then you can get your ATP, providing you have 1,500 hours and you sort of have this unrestricted ATPL that we have over in Europe. But it seems fairly straightforward if you if the visas seem to be the most difficult part of it.
Cool. Well, thank you,
Yeah, and
William.
the visa would be kind of the key to that, William, because I think that could get a little bit, like you said, complicated. So that would be the thing to work through. Because yeah, like Ron said, hey, we're looking for qualified pilots who have our values and who would come and make the place better from day one. That's kind of what we're looking for, is how do you come and join our team and help us be a better company because of your presence. So that's what we're looking for.
Great. I really appreciate the information. Thanks very much.
Thanks, William. A question we got coming off of our social media channels. Horizon, this is for you, Carlos and Eric. What was the time frame to get hired by Horizon and to flow over to Alaska pre-COVID, and what are you forecasting for a post-COVID recovery?
That is a terrific question. So the Pathway program launched right at the beginning of 2018. Initially, we had a lot of pilots that were very qualified and met the requirements. So they started moving over almost immediately. But what you're asking is, what happens when I started? What is the program settled at? So you need obviously 1,000 hours of SIC in Part 21, or unless you have some other qualifying time, to upgrade to captain. So you have to get that. And that's typically, by the time you add training, that's about 18 months, give or take a little bit, maybe just a little bit more than 18 months to do that. And then you go through the upgrade process, and it's in order to qualify to move over to Alaska, they also want some PIC experience, which on the Q400, it's 900 hours and 1,000 on the E, which that's about another, a little bit over a year and a half. So I would say when everything was moving, and it was moving pretty well, it would settle somewhere between 3.5 and 4 years. And you could be on either side of that just a little bit, but it's a heck of a deal because, I was in Ron's shoes for a long time, and I know that Alaska is a very competitive place to get into. And that meant that you had to, as an average candidate, to walk in the door, their average flight time was somewhere in the north of 5,500 hours, with about 1,500 hours of PIC time, give or take a little bit. And if you do the math for our program, if you go either, let's say you're at full ATP, restricted ATP, whichever one of those you want to run through, let's run full ATP through. 1,500 hours to start here at Horizon for a full ATP, 1,000 hours in the right seat, that's 25, 1,000 basically in the left, that's 35. So that gave you about a 2,000 hour advantage of going through the Pathway program than some of the externals, which is just amazing. I mean, to get to Alaska that quickly is something that is a great opportunity for our pilots. Ron, did I misspeak on anything?
No, man. No, you hit it right on. And the average, like Carlos said at the beginning, we got the senior guys, and there's been some slight modifications in the Pathway program. But now that it's settled down, you're right, Carlos, right around 4 years plus or minus 6 months or so. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, thanks, gentlemen, for taking that. All right, moving on to another live question here. Michael Bond. Michael Bond, you're up. Just unmute your microphone and you're free to ask the Alaska team and Horizon team your question.
Hey, how's everyone doing? First time caller, long time listener. Hey, Ron, question for you, sir. What's the hiring outlook for 21 or 22 for Alaska Airlines? Thank you.
Yeah, that is a moving target, Michael. I knew someone was going to ask that question. Well, of course, those plans change constantly in our crew planning and fleet planning, and they're meeting constantly about our hiring projections. I will tell you this: when the pandemic hit, we got creative and we gave, like Horizon, we didn't do any furloughs. We're very proud of that. No furloughs, but what we did offer is voluntary furloughs, voluntary leaves of absence, and extended leaves of absence in increments of 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, up to 18 months. And you could just kind of float away and get paid 50 hours a month to sit on the sideline until the industry bounces back. Most of those pilots have been recalled. Most have, and they're going through training if they have to get currency and things like that. So we should have basically a full complement of pilots. We're thinking by the end of this year, the end of 21, maybe into 22 a little bit. So that pushes our hiring projections out until the spring or summer of 22. So that means you come into the office, start interviewing somewhere around March or so, maybe a year, maybe 14 months from now is when we may turn that machine back on. I got to tell you, the hiring, and Carlos has done it a million times, and I've done it quite a bit. It's the most exciting part of the job. You know, it is the lifeblood of the airline. It's a lot of energy. It's new, getting pilots on the property is the best part of the job. And we look forward to doing it as soon as possible. And a lot of it is dictated by market forces. All of it is dictated by market forces. As soon as the market bounces back, I'd love to put my suit on and start interviewing again.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, Michael. Thank you for your question. Moving on, we've got a hand raised here from Nicholas Bardwaj. Nicholas, you are free to unmute your microphone and go ahead with your question.
Hey there, thanks you guys for coming on and hosting this. Question for Carlos. I know you guys are one of the first regional airlines to start hiring again. My question is, for what kind of people are you currently hiring with regards to experience? Are you hiring people who already hold ATPs, people with jet time? Who are you currently hiring? Obviously, a year ago, we were taking people with 1,500 hours in a 172. Now, I'm just curious how much that's changed.
Nicholas, that's a really good question. And obviously, we're at a point in time that is so different from where we were a year ago. So what I would say is that when we were hiring at that super fast paced, obviously, meeting the hours requirement was one of the key, components. As we're in this at this time, we have the ability to hire pilots that have the same values that we do, that understand what we're all about, that are trying to help us propel ourselves forward, right? I mean, the airline industry, as Brian and Ron know very well, and most of you know, it's a super competitive place, and delivering, doing it safely, having great operational performance, taking care of our guests. Those are the things that are super important. So as we're bringing pilots in, we're actually looking for those fits, whether they're going to be with us 2 years, 4 years, or those that, almost 20% of our pilot group has been here longer than 15 years. We do have pilots that choose to fly their entire career here at Horizon. So if you're going to be here for a career, we're looking for those pilots that are going to make us better. So how do you get in the door? Yeah, I mean, right now, part of the thing is that if you have some 121 experience and all that's helpful, but we're not limiting ourselves to any kind of particular statistic on there. We're looking more broadly at who are you and how do you fit into the DNA of our company, which is something that Alaska has done for years, right? Is looking for those pilots that are going to come in, and from day one, they're going to make the place better.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. Great question.
Thanks, Nick. Let's see. We had a text question, but I see your hand raised as well. So Shane McKenna, Shane McKenna, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone and go ahead with your question, Shane. Welcome.
Hey, gents, thanks for putting this on. It's really cool to see everybody leaning forward and doing this through Zoom. It's been few and far between. My main question was for guys coming out of the military and gals, how far out from the retirement date should we start looking to put our applications in so that it's not too far out, but still in your guys' wheelhouse to get considered?
Okay, I'll go first. We're both military guys, and I say 15 months to a year prior to your terminal leave. I'll even use the military terms. Prior to your terminal leave, you need to start seriously attending, pre-COVID, attending workshops, conventions, getting your paper out there, getting your face out there, getting your resume out there. 15 months to a year prior is a good ballpark. And that gives you an opportunity to attend a couple of conventions, maybe some informal meet and greets like we do here at Alaska and Horizon. So that's about the target. And that also gives you an opportunity to make sure you have recency of experience when you get out. So one of the worst things you can do is stop flying prior to getting out. Make sure you have that recency of experience. It just makes the transition a whole lot easier. Hope that answers your question, Shane.
Can I add a little bit, Ron?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I had a little bit? Right now, we're going through this time period where everything is a little bit upside down, right? But we are seeing daylight out there, and we are seeing that, hey, this might not be as deep as the 2008, 2009, economic recession and the effect that had on the industry. Of course, yet to be determined. There's still a lot of road to travel. But what I would say to this is, and ironically, I said this before the pandemic, is do your research. Figure out what those, I get that sometimes everybody applied to all the majors because, that was the thing to do. But figure out what are the companies that you like. I mentioned, hey, we're going to look for you to be a good fit. But find those companies that are a good fit for you as well, especially when you're moving on to a major and you're going to spend 20, 30, 40 years with them. You want to be happy going to work. And even for those that are planning to go to a regional to build their time, up until recently, right? You were planning on, hey, I was going to be there 4 years and then I was going to move on. And all of a sudden a pandemic or something hits and now you're having to spend longer time at whatever it is that you're doing now. And so it's important that when you come to work, that you're happy going to work, whether it's temporary on your way to a major, if that's what you choose, or when you're at a major. Certainly, if you're going to spend 20, 30, 40 years, you want to be happy going to work. It sounds like Brian loves going to work at JetBlue. Ron and I love coming to work at Alaska and Horizon. And so that makes you happy. That makes your family happy. That makes everybody around you happier, and they benefit because of that. So even now, even in these times where you're like, oh man, when am I going to get hired and by whom? Still do your research and still have those airlines that have those same values that you have, because over the long run, you'll be much happier that way. And what it takes is it takes patience and it takes persistency. And we're back to that again, at least for a little bit, to be persistent with those top two or three carriers. Obviously don't put don't have a couple or whatever, but be persistent with them. Thanks for letting me add on to that.
That was perfect.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Shane, for the question. Question in the chat box here. This comes from Pietro Pizzella. Does Horizon or Alaska limit potential employees to those who hold at least a bachelor's degree? A limit or preference, I suppose, would be the question.
I can start it, Ron. We don't make it as a requirement. Obviously, I believe we listed as preferred for us. I'll let Ron speak to it, but it's one of those that it depends on your timing. When there's less opportunities available to hire pilots, airlines traditionally have put that requirement of having a degree, and then as supply goes down and everything, it gets a little bit more competitive. That has come and gone. So I would say that at this present time, I don't think we're not talking about making any changes to that, but I would certainly be cautious of that happening and keep an eye out for that. Ron?
Yeah, Yeah, agreed. And we dropped that requirement a couple years ago. We found we were losing some great candidates, great pilots, people who could do the job. But of course, that BS is a discriminator, right? It separates you. And like Carlos said, this is a very competitive business, not only on the flight line side, but on the pilot side. You know, getting into a major or a regional is a competitive business. And the thing that can make you a little more competitive is that bachelor's degree. You know, so apples to apples, someone's got a bachelor's degree with 5,000 hours and someone's got 5,000 hours with no BA. Of course, I'm going to look at both and see which is the best fit, but the bachelor's degree may have a slight edge. Okay, I'm just going to be totally honest with you.
Cool. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking that. Just a time check. We are at 4:57 p.m. That's Eastern time. About another 3-4 minutes left. Alaska team, we have 4 more hands raised. Are you cool with going a little bit over? Awesome. I guess I put you on the spot with that. You really can't say no to me now, huh?
We wouldn't anyway. This is. I think we're having as much fun as you guys are.
This is great.
We love talking to your group.
This is great. I wish I could see the faces. You know.
Maybe we'll do that next time. I scare people away though when I say, "Hey, we're going to put you on camera." We've done that before in some other webinars. People are like, "No cameras, no cameras." All right, Wally Smith, you are up. Just go ahead and unmute your microphone, Wally. You are free to ask your question to the Alaskan Horizon team. Thanks for joining.
All right, thank you all for inviting me. I am enjoying the energy over here, and I can see you all faces, which is a great thing. But I'm one of those guys. I have the boxes checked. I put in for you all. I'm at that 4993 with the 3 types, the 7.3 type rating that I got last year. International experience on the 800 NG. I've flown a 300, 400. Typed on the obviously the CRJ because I stayed around for the 4 years, and then I made the transition, and obviously COVID hit. So here's where I'm at. The biggest problem I'm having, I'm that pilot that's right there. I have the bachelor's. I have 3 types, plenty of time in the RJs, international experience, a 7.3 type, but I don't have the 121 PIC type. 121 PIC time. But I did put in for you all last year, and I'm kind of like stuck in that little window. What do I do? You know, obviously not current now, but what do you do at times like this? And obviously your window is not going to be open until next year. Come on, Carlos. Come on, Ron. I see the head nod.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to everything you said, and it all sounds great. You know, I even love your. I hope you don't mind me saying, I love your accent, and I don't know where you're from, but it's very cool.
Tennessee.
There we go, Tennessee. It sounds like that 121 is the holdup, right? And if I had your resume in front of me, of course, we look at resumes all the time. I get a better picture, you know, with a resume, and I see the numbers and see what you've done, and see which carriers you've flown for, and things like that. And you know, reading a resume is an art, more art than science. You really get to pick what's the strengths and weaknesses. And it sounds like the 121 is the holdup, right? Am I reading that right, Wally?
The 121 pilot command time. Yes, that would be correct.
Yes.
So
with that limiting factor, though.
Yeah. Ron, not to cut you off, but hey, Wally, why don't you send your resume to Allison? Because Ron is a spot on. You know, we do so much better by being able to look at a resume, right, Ron? Because we see so many of them, and in a second we can tell you where do you look different than somebody else? Is it the PIC? Is it maybe the experiences that you've had?
Yes.
Because it is like Ron said before really well. It's a competitive industry, and experience translated into. Experience is important because that's what you bring to us, right, Ron? Is what you bring to the right seat and what you offer to that PIC. And then eventually that's the same experience that you take over to that seat when it's your turn to upgrade to captain. So, but us taking a look at what your experience is where we can give you some guidance as to what you should be doing.
Right. You're exactly. I don't even need to be here. Carlos got it. Exactly right.
And it's become so much more competitive now. I mean, we're all in this tough situation in the world, obviously, with COVID and whatnot. We've been experiencing the past 2 years, 3 years, this incredible wave in the airlines that we haven't seen in a long time of people getting into regionals quickly, progressing into that captain seat at a regional, getting hired by a major carrier, which wasn't a thing for quite some time post September 11th. And so it's hard to come off that high now in this low. and then folks like you, Wally, who got into the left seat, and now we're not flying. I can tell you, I mean, just in 2020 alone, normally I average about 500 to 700 hours of flying time. I think last year in 2020, I did about 112. I just didn't do much. We just weren't flying. And so, no, it's a tough point. So I totally get it. But Wally, we're going to have a screen up at the end of the webinar with the Alaska Airlines recruitment email address and the Horizon Airlines recruitment address. So you can utilize the offer that Carlos put on the table there and send your stuff in. And they can maybe give you a little bit more of a heads up. So thank you for your question, Wally. We appreciate it. Let's see, moving on. Michael Strickler, you are up. Welcome to the live portion here. You can go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask the Alaskan Horizon team your question.
Hey there. Thanks so much for taking the time out to do this. Really appreciate it. I'm up here in Anchorage, so I'm writing on you guys all the time. And happy to see the new 175. I take that a lot between Fairbanks and Anchorage. Just one quick question. You kind of answered some of mine, but for somebody in the military, specifically for Alaska, what are you considering competitive for hours coming out of the military? Once you do start hiring, I guess, in 2022.
Yeah. You're a fighter guy, you're a heavy guy?
Heavy tanker, KC-135.
Oh, beautiful.
Agreed.
Love heavy guys because, you know, one, you fly big, complex airplanes. Two, there's a lot of leadership that goes involved in that. So like Carlos was saying, reading that resume, right? And we see your bullets on your resume, but we know what's behind those bullets, right? Each military hour, not to discount the civilian hours, but each military hour has a briefing behind it, a pre-brief, a post-brief, some mission planning, all those leadership aspects. So we know what's involved in that. So to answer your question directly, what are we talking? 3,000 total, 1,500 PIC, something like that for heavy time. Just roundabout figures.
Gotcha. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Let's see, 3 more to go. I'm going to try to do this well. Adbayi, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone. Welcome to the webinar. You can ask the Alaskan Horizon team your question. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Ron. Good afternoon, Carlos and Brian. My questions, most of them have been answered, so to say. I haven't had I wouldn't say any. I haven't had part one-to-one at all. I've been mostly part 91 and part 135, but I just moved into the US about 12 months ago. I have a green card. I don't know if I will be a fit. Actually, I will actually prefer the Horizon. I don't have 737. I don't have anything like that. I've flown Hawkers, Challengers, and Global Express. So the question is directed at Carlos, so to say. If you know, you will be looking at somebody like me. I have close to 8,000 hours PIC, about 10,600 hours total time, and I have about 6,500 hours jet time.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Do me a favor. It's going to be the same thing. Allison's put up her email address here on the chat. Do me a favor. Reach out to Allison and send her your resume, and
Okay.
we'll take it from there. So we'll close the loop with you once you send that to us. How about that?
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cool. We've got 2 more hands raised. We're going to go to that. We would hope that the questions will be a little bit more tailored to a broader audience. So if you have a question that's very specific to your current situation in regards to your hopes for Alaska, I'd request that you do save that for private conversations with the email addresses that we will post. So if your question's a little bit more generic, that is what we love right now. So to appease us to the whole group. So Matthew McGrath, you're up. You are live in the webinar with us. You can go ahead, unmute your microphone and go with your question to the Alaska Horizon team. Welcome.
Hey, aloha everyone from Hawaii. My name is Matt McGrath, currently an Air Force pilot stationed here. And my question is to both of you gentlemen, when you were transitioning from the Air Force to the civilian sector, what was it about the Alaska Airlines culture that drew you to apply? And over the years, how has the airline changed and where do you see the company headed in the decades to come?
Oh my gosh, what a great question.
That's
Carlos, you first. What a great question.
Did you just put that over to me, Ron?
Yeah, I did. Great question.
All right.
Oh.
Hey, Matthew, that is a terrific question. And so I mentioned that I got hired at Alaska in 2002. So that was a year after September 11. And I don't know who remembers what was going on back then, but not that dissimilar from now, right? That there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities going on. And so I was kind of picky. I had only had applied, instead of applying to every single major, I had only applied to about 4 or 5 majors, or 4, because back then there was more than there are now, including Alaska. And I knew about Alaska, but I had grown up in Texas. My wife was from Indiana. We'd been all over the place, but never, we never spent time in the Pacific Northwest. So I knew about Alaska, but not nearly as much as everybody knows about Alaska now. So I feel like I won the lottery when they gave me a call. I get to the place, the size of the company at that point was about 1,500 pilots, because I was 1,501 on the seniority, and now where there's about 3,000, right, Ron? And so what I loved about the place is that at that size, it was the small company feel. It was the DNA about giving back to the community, taking care of our guests, running a safe operation, about that, hey, you weren't just a number, you're a person there. As a matter of fact, I think to this day, even now, when you get the base chiefs, if you throw out any name of any pilot, 2 or 3 of them are going to know who you are. And they're not only going to know who you are, they're going to know where you live. They're going to know your background. It isn't that you go to work and that you get to disappear. You are a very important person to that group, and you make a difference, because at that size, every single person makes a difference to the goal of the company and what they try to do every single day. So looking back, I mean, I wouldn't trade my path at Alaska and Horizon for anything in the world at any other airline. It's a terrific company with people who love the place, who really care about the place, who pulled together during the tougher times and help it be successful, and in the good times as well. So it is. I can't tell you how much I love the place and how fortunate I feel to have had this career path. I think I answered most of your questions. I think we're talking about where we're going, and I'll let Ron answer that one.
Awesome. Yeah, he's exactly right. I got hired a couple years before Carlos, and he mentioned the tough times. When I got hired November 99, and I was a heavy jet guy, 141 C-17 guy. And, but I knew about Alaska Airlines. It was like a small family kind of company. What really sealed the deal for me, 2 months after I got hired, we had our worst day in our history, right? Flight 261 went down. We lost an airplane. We lost a whole lot of passengers. It was an awful day. But what I saw was this airline and the community, how they came together and took care of one another. Not just the employees, but the community, everyone affected. It was incredible how empathetic, how caring, how much feel there was in this place. And I thought, that's it. This is definitely the place I'm going to plant my flag. I'm going to have a career here. And it's like a squadron. Now, you're a squadron member, a military guy. And like Carlos said, this is a small place. This is a big base in Seattle. We have 1,300 pilots. But Dave and I, my partner, we know 1,300 pilots by first name. We know some spouses. We know some kids. And like Carlos said, this is a small place. And you can make a difference, a positive difference, every time you show up for a parent. Every time. And I think that's the difference. Where are we going in the future? This culture is very special to us, very special. And we want to not only maintain it, but improve it. Every day we're trying to improve this place and make it better. And if you can make this place better, if you can join us and make it better, you're our guy, you're our gal. That's it. We want this, and we want people to have amazing experiences when they get on our airplanes. And if you can make that happen, I hope I answered your question. Sound like an ad, but I live this place and we love it.
I know exactly how you feel, Ron.
Matthew, thank you so much for that. What a perfect question to end with in our live question and answer session here. So Matthew, thank you so much for sharing that and asking that question. And if I could add my own piece, obviously not, thanks. Definitely not about obviously working at Alaska, but culture is so important. Company culture and the way that a company can make their employee feel empowered to do the right thing for customers. I think that is so important. And when you search for your airline or search for your business aviation company, search for wherever you're going to fly. Everyone has planes. Everyone operates pieces of metal with safety top of mind, getting from point A to point B. But a place that you really want to search for your career to be is somewhere where you feel a validated, accepted member of that employer, of that community, and it can become another family. So that is my advice. I have a lot less experience than Ron and Carlos. I'm only 14 years in the airline business as a pilot. But my experience has always been go somewhere that makes you happy, go somewhere that treats you well, go somewhere where your chief pilot knows your name, knows your kid's name, knows your spouse's name. It's such a cool feeling to feel that empowerment. So it's great to see that from the Alaska Airlines team. And that's evident by the fact that there is such a love for Alaska Airlines in the Pacific Northwest and throughout the country. And JD Power continues to award top satisfaction for customer satisfaction top marks to Alaska Airlines on a regular basis. So kudos to all of you. We're going to end the regular question and answer session. I have one question, and I think, Allison, I know you're on here. This might be directed towards you. One of our members down in Australia, Jesmond Bly, he's been a longtime NGPA member. He asks, what about A&Ps? He's an A&P for Qantas Airlink down in Australia right now. And he wants to know what the future demands might be for A&Ps at Alaska. And what would be the possibility of international applicants that meet FAA requirements being brought on by the Alaska team?
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to the pilot hiring. The regionals will probably are hiring before the majors will, and very similar to the pilots. I don't believe we currently provide sponsorship for A&Ps, but going to Alaska Air Jobs will have more information. But if you already have the ability to work in the United States, take a look at Alaska Air Jobs. I think we are hiring on the regional side, just not yet on the major side.
Cool. And then the A&P outlook, I know that it's there's a great need for A&Ps, and there's not a huge pipeline of A&Ps coming through. So are you seeing anything in terms of your company status for a big need, a large need for A&Ps right now?
I think similar to the pilot shortage we were experiencing a couple of years ago, they know it's going to come for the maintenance side. So I think there are going to be opportunities definitely in the future for A&Ps here in the Pacific Northwest.
Cool. Thank you, Allison. Well, Ron, Carlos, Allison, we are going to call it quits here. We know your time has gone about 14 minutes past what was already scheduled. So I just wanted to say a big thank you on behalf of NGPA. You called out multiple times the support for the LGBTQ community. You showed that beautiful plane painted in that rainbow light. I believe you said that was in Palm Springs or wherever it might have been. Maybe we can get that. Maybe we can get that light and that plane in Palm Springs in 2022 when we have our next big event. That would be a cool backdrop for our airport event there. No, but thank you for the continued relationship. Thank you for the continued sponsorship that you offer NGPA. We really value our relationship with Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air, and we look forward to what we can continue to do to make aviation better and more inclusive for everyone as we go forward. So on behalf of the entire board of directors of the NGPA, my executive leadership team, and myself, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us, for all the attendees. Coming up next is going to be a little goodbye screen that will have the email addresses for both Horizon and Alaska. They have been gracious enough to take some more questions via email, and you can enjoy some nice tunes to end your day. So if you don't have anything else to say, Ron, Carlos, Allison, anything from you all?
That was fun.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Almost said, thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you all. You all have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. That's my tagline as I end any NGPA event. And we hope to see you soon again back in person once this COVID stuff is finally behind us. On behalf of everyone here at NGPA, have a great rest of your day, folks. Here comes that screen with the email addresses. Bye-bye. Thanks again.